Hi. Okay, recording in progress. This is good. All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to my video blog, I guess. My name is Dave, the dude, and today's video is going to be me trying to talk about a topic that I have a good deal of trepidation about tackling. I'm sure you'll see why. I thought I would discuss some of my theophanies. The word theophany means appearance of God or manifestation of deity in sensible form. I've had several of these, although I suppose I would use the term sensible somewhat loosely. It's become a sort of ongoing theme in my life from time to time. Now, please know I have been diagnosed with some form of schizoid disorder for what that's worth. I'm upfront about that so that people can take what I say in context, maybe with as much salt as they need to. I've had to learn to try to hold these stories very lightly in order to go on with my life. The author, Philip K. Dick, who had his own famous encounters with the divine, wrote, God is not an entity of our universe, not in our space-time framework. He's orthogonal at right angles to it. Theophanies are cross-sections of him as he intersects our continuum. And at such a tangent do our paths meet, his, that we can never directly perceive him. I think I agree with these assertions to some extent. I do not understand exactly what it is I've seen or am seeing. I know I'm glimpsing something much larger than I can fully comprehend. And positing that these encounters of mine have some vertical substance to them. Well, they might be simply pathological symptoms manifesting, but I don't think so, and you'll see why shortly, I hope. So, all right. Let me give you then a high-level description of my strange secret life, and then I'll drill down to specifics. So I have met God several times in person. He did not appear in a burning bush or as a face in my raisin toast. Rather, he showed up, we sat on a bench, and we talked. So one might say I met a man who claimed to be God, at least, and he acted like I suppose God might, and I believed him. Additionally, I've had multiple instances of contact with what I'm calling angels, for lack of a better idea of what to call them. They look very human. God and the angels seem to favor speaking in steganographic code and metaphor. That is, they may seem to be speaking about something else, but there's a second layer of meaning behind what they say. Sometimes I seem to be encountering maybe a spirit of sorts, taking over the functions of an ordinary person and sort of puppeting them. Other times, I can only assume they're materializing bodies for themselves. Okay, now, so I understand what I've just described sounds like madness. What can I say? I've had more than a decade to come to terms with these happenings. They keep recurring. There are, in some instances, multiple witnesses, so it can't be all in my head. The larger question it raises in my mind is whether this reality is all that stable. I have come to be convicted that we are living in some kind of dreamlike matrix, simulated reality, and that the beings I am encountering have a form of administrative access. Synchronicities provoke a numinous sense in us because it reminds us that we are in a dream, an illusory construct. I think this is innate knowledge to most of us. We just sort of forget it. There's a symbolic code to our dreams, and there is symbolism in odd coincidences that startle us into such a realization. The gods appear to speak in symbolic language. This has me thinking that our cosmos is a projection of the unconscious. At least I suppose that's what I think. I think it would be a good idea to give a concrete example of what I'm talking about by going into detail about one of my encounters. So a little bit of background first. You should know that I have in the past been a practicing magician. I've been a lot of things actually, but yes, I'm serious about this. Magic or magic, as it's sometimes called. So that's playing with your own belief systems to hack the executable dream time for fun and profit. And in point of fact, for a while, I was prosecuting or fancied myself to be prosecuting a secret occult war against the Illuminati, counterspelling their rituals and so forth. Things got pretty weird with menacing synchronicities and such for a while. Things got stranger still when what seemed to be the agents of this matrix started phoning my house and driving around my neighborhood. Yeah, I know, I must be spitting bullshit or deeply lost in delusion. I understand if you're saying that to yourself. I understand having that perspective on what I'm saying. I hope you'll hear me out though. I think this is a good story. So the date was September 22nd, 2017. I was certainly slipping mentally, though I had some insight into my condition. I was having a chapel perilous experience, or what some might call a borderline episode of psychosis. I was acting out somewhat in a way that was affecting some people close to me detrimentally. Additionally, the aforementioned agents were putting in appearances again, though they seemed to be kept at bay by punitive interventions by, let's call them the other team. I was feeling pretty panicked and scrambled. The hard part about magic, in my experience, is not doing it, but rather putting a lid on it once you get proficient at it. Amidst all this, I was trying to keep one foot on the ground and continue living my normal life. Now, on this particular day, I had to drive to a bus stop to pick up my parents, who had been gone for several days on a tour of Quebec. I got in the car and left my home in Richmond and drove into the neighboring city of Canada to make the rendezvous. My brain was very much on fire. I was not feeling well mentally, but curious calm sort of came over me as I was driving. I decided to put on some music. The song that played was Sirius, Eye in the Sky by Alan Parsons Project. The last note of this song finished at exactly the moment I pulled up to the bus stop. The place was empty, save for one man sitting on a bench about 15 feet from my car. He was dressed head to toe in stylish black leathers. He wore a cowboy hat, dark glasses, and sported across his lap a very large and impressive looking banjo. My first thought was, well, shit, it looks like the devil's come to collect me personally. I wasn't at my most rational at this time. My second thought was, I guess I could just stay in my car and see what happens. And then my third thought was, well, fuck it. I might as well go out and meet this fate head on. So I got out of the car and approached the man and sat on the bench to the man's right and sticking out my hand, I said, "Hi, I'm David." The man reached over to shake my hand and said, "Hi, David. My name's Randy. I'm pleased to meet you." Returning his attention to his banjo, he said, it says in the Bible, the heart is deceitful above all things and desperately sick. Who can understand it? I, the Lord, search the heart and test the mind, to give every man according to his ways, according to the fruit of his deeds. At that point, I said nothing because my brain was doing backflips. I was experiencing severe cognitive feedback, trying to shut it down, trying to suppress thoughts was a bad habit I had at the time, which caused me a great deal of suffering, resulting in OCD and intrusive thinking. Thoughts such as, fuck this guy, I don't deserve this, started bubbling up in my psyche. And suddenly, quite certain that my companion could hear the noise in my head, I started to panic. Randy, for his part, said nothing for a bit, but started playing scales on his banjo as though he was tuning it. Twang, twang, twang. It was like a soundtrack for my mental cacophony. I thought to myself, if this guy starts strumming that thing in earnest, I'm going to find myself in a world of suck. Some sort of survival instinct kicked in, though, and I managed to claw my way to the surface of my thoughts enough to say, do you mind knocking that off? It's kind of fucking with me. I still wasn't sure who I was talking to, but protocol seems to be in these situations to play along with the conversation and try to keep up with the deeper layers of it. Randy chuckled and stopped. He asked coyly, "Am I driving you nuts?" "I'm already nuts, clearly," I replied. Randy laughed at that and adjusted his instrument. And then he said, I know what you're thinking. With the size of the universe being what it is, and with all those stars and planets out there, how can God find time to talk to one little insignificant guy?" I nearly melted with relief at this point. The encounter had suddenly become more friendly. Or had it? Randy next said to me, sitting on a fence is the least comfortable place you can hope to find yourself. And now, this seemed to me to be a direct reference to conversations I've been having in weeks previous with a friend, where I had characterized my mental state as being on the fence between a magical view of things and a grounded view of things. But I wasn't sure what he meant, so I said, "Can you explain that?" Randy said, "Well, you might be going along living your life, and suddenly it comes up that you've got an itch. So you get it checked out, and it turns out to be rectal cancer. Well, now you're fucked, because you're shitting into a colostomy bag for the rest of your life, and that's not a lot of fun. But you'd be lucky to get away with that, because if sometime later the itch returned, and then you got it checked, then you found out you got bone cancer, well, then you'd be fucked." It occurred to me later, vaguely, that he was maybe talking about the perils of psychosis. But again, in the moment, I wasn't really sure what he meant. But he did wait for me to process things a bit. I wondered what to say next. I knew I was talking to, I thought I was talking to God. So what do you say to him? I think I blurted out something like, my relationship with my dad is pretty troubled. That was sort of archetypal thinking. That seemed applicable to my relationship with God too. He nodded knowingly and said he had had a troubled relationship with his own father. Fathers and sons, there's a topic, he said. He said his father had anger issues that had been passed on. He said, I have a real bad temper, you know, but I've learned to deal with it. When something pisses me off, I just take a breath, count to 10 or so, and usually another way of looking at the situation presents itself. Realizing he was intimating that he was angry with me, I said, I have hubris issues that I can't get a handle on. Randy chuckled dryly, as if I didn't know the half of it. And then he said, there's a movie I want you to watch. It's called Map of the Human Heart. I said, do you mind if I make a note of that to myself? Not at all, he said. So I picked up my phone, I fiddled inexpertly with it, I found the voice record button, and I said into the mic, Map of the Human Heart. Yeah, he said. And the mic caught that too. I played it back later, and his voice was clearly audible on the recording I made. Now that seems significant. Hallucinations don't usually show up on audio recordings. We talked a short while about some other things. My memory fails me at this point. His tendency to talk in what I think was steganographic symbolism made it difficult to follow much of what he said. I was also freaking out a bit and trying to play it cool. He talked about having dropped off several cousins at Kelsey's Roadhouse. Every time I meet God, he's going on about his cousins. I think he means other aspects of himself, but it kind of beats me, to be honest. We talked in total for about 15 minutes. Just as the busload of passengers arrived, he turned to me and said, well, it's time for me to go. Then he leaned in close to me when he dropped his sunglasses so he could look me in the eye from inches away. And I was kind of sketching out at this point. I had trouble looking him in the eye, to be honest. But he said that, you know, when you're looking up at the sky, you'll see airplanes flying in front of the sun way up there. And it all looks like it's taking place at around the same altitude. But don't be fooled. You know the sun is way, way higher than the airplanes are. That's what he said. Perhaps that was his way of reassuring me that God was far superior to the archons of this world, which was a question on my mind. I took it as a great grace that he revealed this to me. It seems like the sort of thing I should have intuited or simply had faith in, I suppose, but as things got real, I found myself feeling like I was in over my head. So his words reassured me. He shook my hand again, he slung his banjo, and he walked off. Seconds later, I saw my parents disembarking from one of the buses. I was feeling blasted and bewildered. I was feeling relief and elation, and also a sense of the absurd. Like, had that really just happened? I ran to greet my folks and help them load their luggage in the back of the car. It took a couple of minutes. We made small talk. Hi, Dad. Good to see you. How was the trip? As we closed the trunk of the car and my dad went to get behind the steering wheel, a pitch black roadster with tinted windows pulled up and the front window lowered, and inside the car was Randy. He leaned out and said, it was a pleasure talking to you, David. You're a smart guy. I went to the window and shook his hand one more time and said, thank you for everything, Randy. Take care. I turned to climb in the back of the family car as Randy drove off out of the parking lot. My dad asked, who was that? And I shrugged, who indeed? I said, that was Randy, just some fella I was passing the time with waiting for you to show up. And Dad said, oh, neat. And so I kept it to myself, you know. The fallout from that meeting and the others like it that I've had was considerable, in the sense that I've been since dealing with some form of post-traumatic stress. That's basically the brain trying to process an experience that does not compute. I talk a good game sometimes about being a hip and cool wizard, but when push comes to shove and shit gets real, I have trouble processing the stuff that happens to me. I still wrestle existentially with these experiences, which is part of why I'm finally writing them down and talking about them. Linguistic processing. I'm attempting to get some perspective on something that was previously all in my head. This isn't the sort of thing you can casually talk to people about. Either they are going to believe you or they aren't. I'm not sure which is worse. I'll just note the following things about my putative meetings with Big G, and some of what I'm about to describe may resonate with science fiction fans. It seems he always appears as someone different. To me, it appears as if a spirit animates person X and speaks to me mostly in character as that person. The person afterwards seems to have no recollection of the specifics of the conversation. As I've noted, Big G seems fond of speaking in symbolism or steganography, such that a message is relayed that is highly personal, and an eavesdropper to the conversation would think the conversation was about something else entirely. Almost everything he says means something else, or seems to. Big G has at various times appeared to me as total strangers, as relatives, as phone callers, as Facebook randoms, and in some instances seems to have manifested or materialized. Poof! Just like that, when he wants to be recognizable. Now, I'm fairly suspicious, though not certain, that some of these conversations have been with what I am calling angels and not with Big G himself. He strikes me as kind, patient, benevolent, impossibly wise, and not terribly reflexively sentimental. He seems to have a sort of shit happens philosophy, which I suppose is suitable for someone with what I imagine is his busy schedule and task list. I suppose I've been left with the distinct impression that the human race is playing out some dialectic process on the world stage. God seems like the sort of fellow who cares nothing for our race, creed, nationality, religious affiliation, or sexual proclivities, except as such things inform the contents of our character. Why is this happening to me? Your guess is ultimately as good as mine. I have some ideas. Perhaps I've given you some insight into what it's like to live as a somewhat high-functioning schizoid individual. But I'll run over some ideas maybe in another video essay. For now, I wanted to tell this story. I hope I relate it well enough. I concluded God was delivering a friendly warning to me to stop fucking around. I did my best to take the warning seriously, but I am a fuck up with a laundry list of character defects. I can only hope that the fact that he was patient with me means I am not a lost cause, and there's still something in my heart that he sees that's worth salvaging. I think it's important to emphasize that maybe if my interpretation of these events is correct, and I acknowledge that's a big if, this story's takeaway should be less about Dave meeting God and more about the idea that maybe we all have at some time or another. Perhaps what's different about me is that my peculiarly shattered intellect and mental condition have tuned me to pay attention a bit more or a bit differently, such that I know it's happening when it's happening. I will say that the movie he recommended, Map of the Human Heart, is a hell of a profound movie about the nature of human evil. It's actually about a holy boy with a lot of personal problems who kind of goes bad and winds up participating in the firebombing of Dresden during the Second World War. I went home and watched it that night. I suppose I would recommend it to anyone who wants to get some insight into God's thinking about the problem with people. I mean, I think that's what he was trying to get across there. I'm not quite sure what else to say about all this or what to think about it. Maybe I'd best leave it at that. I've tried to offer a small window into something very deeply personal. My life since has been, in some sense, all about living the question of whether I should try to tell anyone about this. At this juncture, I have decided that it makes sense to do so. Carl Jung said the defining question for humans is, are we connected to something infinite or not? My experience is that we are. So maybe saying why I think so will offer some light to others casting about in the darkness. I hope so. I also tentatively and perhaps hubristically suppose that maybe this story can offer an answer of sorts to our collective dilemma, by which I mean the gradual takeover of this reality by the forces of evil, or the New World Order, or the Black Iron Prison, or whatever we're calling it. We're almost done. We can't vote our way to a better world. We can't figure out a formula that works. The spiritual infrastructure needs to change on a grassroots level, in my opinion. I think we need a new religion that brings together and completes the picture of what we're doing here and why. My recommendation would be that we turn to Taoism, which I've written about extensively elsewhere. The world only functions the way it's meant to, I think, when people are in tune with the Tao, cultivating compassion, humility, and moderation in themselves. At the very least, knowing there's a God, I think solves the who watches the watchman problem, which inevitably results in corruption of our hierarchical structures. So perhaps you can take my word for it. Someone is indeed watching the watchman. A message of hope for some of us and a warning for others. I might do another video later on discussing the implications of this in more detail. For now, I think that should suffice. I want to see what sort of feedback I get on this. I suppose I'm expecting cricket noises. I'm not sure what else I'm hoping for, to be honest. But I thank you for your patience if you are still listening. I wish each of you the best in your journey, and may God's love be with you. It seems to me that it must be. Bye, everyone. Thank you again, and have a great day.
Rising up above the noise and confusion, trying to see beyond the fear and illusion. I was blindly soaring, and I flew too high. Eyes could see, but I was still quite blind. Still could think, although I'd lost my mind. Dogs were barking after me, I was on the lam. Met a man in black, then a banjo in his hand. Thought he was the devil come to drag me off to hell. Turned out it was the other guy, but that scared me as well. Looked my maker in the eye, couldn't hold his gaze. Mine was raging with black fire, soul a sickly blaze. I said my human heart is sick and weak and I need to repent. And I don't aim to cheat you, but it's sorry easily said. Man in black was angry, but he took a mindful pause. Kindly then he let me know I wasn't a lost cause. He strummed upon his banjo and asked me how I felt, and in relief I noticed then my panic started to melt. Whoa, fire's rising on the mountain, dogs are on the run, yeah. Legion boiling over in the house of rising sun, yeah. He said he dropped his cousins off at the roadhouse down the way. We spoke about our fathers and he spoke a bit of faith. He said, you're sitting on a fence, that's gotta fucking hurt. You need to get down, have some faith and come back down to earth. And you don't need to worry cause the sun's up in the sky. You're a pretty smart guy, boy, be mindful of the lie. He left me at the bus stop then to ponder on his words. I felt relief, elation, and a sense of the absurd. I carried on with life from there as best as I could. And maybe I learned something there, I hope I understood. God's not a guy to fuck with or try too hard to sway. Those eyes of his still haunt me and I think I hear him say, dream on, my lost and wayward son, carry on, thou shalt in tragic